Hi, everybody. It's been quite a while since you've seen me, but I wanted to come and do this really interesting discussion with Amanda Sherlip. We talked way back in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, and we kind of caught up a few months ago. I think it was a few months ago to kind of see how things are going with her organization. It's called Hands Across the Sea. She's the executive director. And she does some amazing things with this organization around literacy. And I cannot wait for her to share some updates and some things that are going on. If you wanted to go to the website while we're talking, it's handsacrossthesea.org. And you can also follow them on social media. I'll put all of those links in the description of this video as well. So, how are you?
I am well. I've just returned from a marathon of school opening trips down in the islands and, pulled my coat back out and,
and come back up here where it's like not 80 degrees all the time.
Not so much.
So can you introduce yourself? Just kind of tell us a little bit about you. You don't have to do like your full professional bio, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, where you're from, where you are now.
So my name is Amanda Sherlip, and I'm the executive director of Hands Across the Sea. I am from New York. I am a proud born and bred Long Islander, the daughter of parents from Brooklyn. And you could take the girl out of New York, but we'll always be real direct no matter where we are. I live in the suburbs now, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wow, so, that's a huge change.
Yeah, the pandemic made me really reprioritize, and I can't change being a workaholic, but I could put myself in an environment where I can try to be more present as a mom while being a workaholic. And I thought that this would be a nice change of pace. So, yeah.
So what do you like to do the most outside of work? You've told us you're a workaholic, but there's got to be some other things that you do that you kind of love.
In my past life, I was a violinist vocationally. And so I can't help but be anywhere where there's live music. But my life is a lot less glamorous now. And I spend my free time at kids' sports and in nature and doing things with family, or trying to be as active as I can in the community through different philanthropic causes.
Okay, so philanthropy is kind of at the heart of it's not just your job. It's something that it's like in you. That's a thing that you really, really love to do.
Yeah, I was raised where my mother, taught me early on that there's no greater antidepressant and no greater gift than to be able to give and do for others. And there's just always something meaningful to do through service. And it's a great way to meet wonderful people and to do something about the things that matter to you.
Yes. So speaking of organizations that do things that matter, tell me about Hands Across the Sea, a little bit about how you got involved, why you love it, and what the organization does for children with literacy.
I love Hands Across the Sea. I'm the executive director, but I'm also the cheerleader on the sidelines of the organization and everything it's doing. So it is an NGO, a non-governmental organization, or in the US, we think of a 501c3 tax-exempt organization on a mission that's so clear and obvious and important, and yet also so unique, because we're working on raising children's literacy, but it's specifically in the Eastern Caribbean. And I dropped everything when I ran into Hands Across the Sea, because that mission was so focused and immediately says to me, why is one organization focused on something so completely straight and direct in such a specific location? So the Eastern Caribbean, or as some people know it, the West Indies, and there's no shortage of different ways to refer to the region. Some people refer to the area as part of the global South. got mixed reviews. So the Eastern Caribbean is largely either still a part of the British Commonwealth or formerly the British Commonwealth, with also some countries that have sustaining, enduring, or past ties with France or the Netherlands. And so it puts it into a category where financial resources are coming from and whose ties and sense of obligation is very fuzzy. And there's a lot of legality around that fuzziness.
Yes.
And yet it's in close proximity. It really is the neighbor and the sister to the United States. So much of the United States is Caribbean. And the Caribbean culture is deeply infused in some of what makes the U.S. so wonderful. And yet there are many countries that I can name in the Eastern Caribbean that colleagues and friends have, pedestrians and civilians have never heard of. So the awareness of all of this, my personal awareness of that and seeing that there's a nonprofit dedicated to something that's vital, which is making sure all children have access to library resources, literacy, and necessary learning, and understanding that this is directed towards an area where, when I think of some of the large NGOs around the world who are working on education and literacy, they're working in India, they're working in certain areas in Africa, they're working in Central America, but I never heard of anybody working in the Eastern Caribbean. And it touched me very deeply that one organization was playing such an important role for so many children. And as the organization was preparing to go through a founder transition, I felt a call to action because I've been a leader in several founder transitions, and I know how difficult those are.
Yes.
And as soon as I became aware that an organization that's serving so many may or may not be able to go through a transition during the pandemic, nonetheless, I kind of dropped everything. I took a pay cut. I changed my lifestyle, and I just felt like this is what I need to be doing.
That is awesome. Now, when you let's say that you're in an elevator and you need to tell somebody between the 6th floor and the lobby exactly what Hands Across the Sea does. You've got 6 floors to get it done, which is probably about 35 seconds. What would you tell them that Hands Across the Sea does?
Hands Across the Sea is a grassroots nonprofit that serves 6 countries in the Eastern Caribbean. More than 211,000 children have received nearly 600,000 brand new, relevant, world-class, culturally responsive books that have been vital to their learning and their well-being. Nearly all of these children don't have home libraries. I can't even wrap my head around what it would have been like to not have books growing up. And it makes my stomach turn to think that we have so much abundance and that there are children who don't even have a book. So Hands Across the Sea is working on solving that and more. We put experts who are local leaders who are paid, who go in and make sure the utilization and oversight of the programs and the resources is as effective as possible. And we even take that grassroots knowledge and help bring that to policymakers so that they can put the children first.
Wow. So, okay. So we're at the lobby now. So hopefully whoever's in the lobby is pulling out a checkbook. That was a good one. That was very, very good. What are some of the statistics around why Hands Across the Sea is so important? Because I know growing up, I had books. It was just kind of a thing. And I know my parents, they're from Trinidad, and I don't remember them talking about owning books. Like my dad used to love building bookshelves. And like that was just something that he enjoyed doing. But I know growing up, he did not have a bookshelf, didn't have a need for a bookshelf, because you just had the readers from school and that really was it. You didn't read for leisure. So what are some of the statistics that drive hands across the sea to get these books into the hands of the kids?
The statistics in the Eastern Caribbean are an interesting meta conversation, as well as the statistics specifically. I have some friends in the US in academia who are working on the notion of decolonizing research, and I've asked that they include areas of work that Hands Across the Sea is involved in that, because the way that we're approaching statistics in the region is not feasible. And so major US intergovernmental organizations and universities still haven't been able to retrieve the kind of data that would say how many households do or do not have children's libraries. And we've been approached about it. And our answer has basically been, in almost 17 years working with the kids, we know that the statistic that we're working with is essentially most of the kids don't have books. And if we knock on their door, some of the parents are not going to feel comfortable being honest about that, because they're struggling with basic resources. So one of the things that drives our work is poverty levels. One of the things that drives our work is graduation levels. There was some research done with USAID over several years, and what they found was that through intervention, pre-program for the early learner program, children at, I believe, grade 2 were reading, 9% of them were reading at grade level. And by the end of the program, 15% were reading at grade level. And that's really the only reliable data that I think came out meaningfully. The bigger picture is kind of the global stats, which is that 771 million adults lack basic literacy skills. And if a child is not reading at grade level by grade 2, it's going to become incrementally difficult as they go on in life, and their lifetime earnings decrease, their autonomy, their health outcomes, their job capabilities. And then you compound COVID, and the Eastern Caribbean and Latin America had either the first or the second highest number of total missed school days. So everything that we know through the context or the lens of American data on like the effects of learning changes or distance learning on literacy, we simply see firsthand as being compounded. We see the aggression increasing. We see the children losing interest. The stat that the region has is that 7 out of 10 boys are dropping out of school, and 4 out of 10 girls. I think they might be double counting some kids because of moving. Nonetheless, it's alarming. So we work from the premise of trying to mitigate remediation being necessary in secondary school. And we work a lot with anecdotal, and we're actually now doing some outcome harvesting. And we do continuous monitoring. And so does the U.S. Peace Corps and USAID and the University of West Indies and the Regional Commission. So everybody's kind of trying to tackle that.
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting when we talked back in 2020 was how closely the organization works with teachers. I think that's really important when you don't have the hard numbers. I mean, in the US, with all of the resources that we have, our statistics are still not great, right? So, getting into the schools and talking to the teachers, and I really liked the way that you all worked with them. Tell me more about how you work with the teachers to make sure that the children are getting what they need, not just taking a book home with them, but being able to actually read the book and to know what they're trying to get from the book. Can you share a little bit about that? I know you do a little training with the teachers as well.
So we have programmatic manuals that are in every school that we work in. And so in some 430 plus or minus at any point in time, primary and secondary schools, there is a Caribbean literacy and school support class program manual. And that is for primary and secondary school teachers. And there's also something called the TRG, the Teacher Resource Guide. And pre-COVID, we were doing large workshops and trainings on the TRG. We use a lot of acronyms in the region. But the TRG was helping with the implementation of the class program, but also helping to enhance the all of the programs that were coming into the region. Basically saying, we don't expect teachers to know everything and have the pathways and the answers on their own. We're going to provide you with manuals that you can rely on and training on the utilization of those manuals of how books and how the library is going to support your academic and school and environmental goals. So what does it look like from a basic level to even just do library administration, like timetabling? We take it for granted in the US. It's like, you just know that your child is going to be going to the library. You just know this and that, right? But these come from a policy side. So what happens when you're dealing with different kinds of policy or different resources or different spatial realities? So we work with the schools and training on that, and how to manage the books. We are not concerning ourselves with the Dewey Decimal System. We've learned on the job what really works and not. So they label books in a way to make them accessible to the students. And we teach them how to help students find appropriate level of reading, because success in literacy is tied with a child's confidence. And if they think that they're reading at their level and they're not succeeding, they become demoralized and give up. So how do we break that barrier down? And then we also sprinkle in a lot of training skills and techniques. And part of the special sauce is that nearly all of our program officers, who are called literacy links, are very respected, beloved members of their community who have retired from the Ministry of Education in different school roles. So we have a brain trust. And because they don't work for the ministry, they're not coming from any hierarchical space where like they're overseeing somebody. They're coming in and saying, I'm here beside you. How can I help you? But they're also saying, if you want these resources, you need to follow through with these commitments. So they ensure the utilization, they build the skills and the confidence, and they just become a confidant and friend to the schools. And it really works.
It's so wonderful to have somebody that's local that kind of knows the government side of the system and how things are run. And then they can come in and work on the receiving end of those services of that, of the organization and how things work in that particular country. What I find fascinating is in the US, things are different from state to state, right? But it's still one country. People think of the Caribbean as one place, but these are actual separate countries. And it's wonderful that you're able to cover a region that way, not just one particular country that has their own customs and their own way of doing things and their own government. I mean, they're separate governments. And I think that's just really, really fascinating to have an organization that is able to do that and serve the kids the way that you do. What are some of the major milestones that you've hit, that, goals that you've set for yourself, that you've actually hit and are really proud of?
I'm like a proud mama with hands across the sea. My son was 2 when I stepped into the role, and now he's 6. And so I've watched this organization grow with my family. So there's the soft milestones, and then there's the hard milestones. When I came in, one of the really important things to me was that we immediately diversify our board, because we had a working board, and anybody who works in the nonprofit sector in the US knows that there's a shortage of great board members. And because of that, when people believe in your mission, it's such a gift to have them join the board. What becomes challenging is when you're a virtual board with a remote organization where your programs are overseas. How are you going to bridge the divide where you need to have talent who have the time and motivation to support your organization, but who also reflect the community you serve in a way that allows you to really build your culture as an organization in a full circle way? And that's especially hard to do in early years of an organization when you're coming from a place of survival, right? So you need a librarian on the board, you need a finance person on the right. So right away, I called professionals and friends of mine who are from the Caribbean, and I asked them if they would please add this to their list of priorities. And I'm persuasive, so they said yes. And and I'm really proud because we have executive board members who are from Trinidad, St. Kitts. We have a Native American who lived and served in the schools in the Peace Corps on multiple islands.
Wow.
And we also have people who have been invested in the region who spend time every year down there. A school administrator, a legend of a school administrator, in my opinion, in the US. And so that felt like a really huge success and win. I felt very proud of the board's dedication to doing that important work. Then when it came to the staff, when I came in, our literacy links, just based on where the organization was in its life cycle, were transactional workers, where they were really making sure that books got put in places and they were overseeing the use of them because that was where we were at that time. And within my first few weeks, I leveraged the opportunity that COVID gave us and said, we're going to start being a Zoom team. And I created essentially Zoom rooms of 12 Caribbean leaders and myself and our board chair, and was basically just like, we are going to become a really close-knit team, and started working with the team on how they could learn and share with one another, which of course, in my capacity as the program director, I've really been nurturing and like pairing and identifying whose core competencies are where. But how can we be a brain trust? And how can I give you the kind of guidance, boundaries, and goals that make it so you're empowered to take the lead and run with it, knowing that these are the goals, this and this. And it's made it so that each country is flourishing in its own beautiful way in alignment with where it is, which relates to the difference in not just the government, but even the topography. It's a very different game running a program in Dominica than it is in Nevis.
Yes. Very different.
Then I think there's two more things I'm really proud of. I know it's a lot, but I'm a proud mama.
I mean, you've done just from when I was first introduced to the organization, the website alone, like just being able to navigate everything, find what you need, the videos, the photos, like you've grown a ton. So I guess it's kind of unfair for me to ask you for one big moment. So that's my fault. But I'm sure you have a whole lot of them. So you all make sure that you visit the website. Their milestones are on there. There's all sorts of resources on there. It's handsacrossthesea.org. So you've grown not just in, what we can see and what you're producing and what you've done in the region. You've also grown as far as working with corporations and institutions that want to support you. So can you tell me some about the support that you have from different companies and different organizations?
We are blessed with some amazing humans who believe in our mission and are in a position to be generous in supporting our mission. And so over the years, we have remarkable support from CIBC, which is a bank based out of Barbados. We work with the bank based out of Barbados. The Beverly Foundation, which is a US-based foundation out of Minneapolis. And I'd like to get back to that a little later when we dive into this. The Sandals Foundation, which I can't miss, gushing about them. The Mystique Charitable Foundation, who's been underwriting our work in St. Vincent. The Mill Reef Fund, which are a group of very generous homeowners in Antigua who pool their resources and have a remarkable board of trustees who do everything they can to benefit Antigua and the youth. And they don't just show up in support, but they show up in presence. And Wishing Well, which is the foundation arm associated with Elite Island Resorts. So a lot of the all-inclusive resorts in Antigua. And they're one of their owners, Robert Barrett, just was knighted, Sir Robert. So these foundations and corporate foundations, plus a handful of family foundations in the U.S., plus a bunch of individuals, that's what makes up the funding for Hands Across the Sea. Heaven forbid I forgot anyone. And over the last few years, we have been, and the Four Seasons Homeowners Foundation in Nevis. Over the last several years, we have worked so hard to build a programmatic forward approach and to show that even in an environment where statistics aren't going to be readily available, it's not just us, the government has major statistical gaps. Everybody is doing what they can. This is a resource issue.
Yes.
That we can show efficacy. And it's a lot easier to show that efficacy to organizations who can step in physically to the spaces where we're working. And what we have seen happen is the joy of the work and the mission spreading and the generosity growing. And it feels like a pat on the back of like, we see you, we see how much you're doing for the children. We don't want to let the children down. And so we've been able to just continuously develop more programmatic forward. And in order to do that, you have to be a bit ahead of the curve, because that's what social innovation does. We're anticipating what challenge are the children about to face? How can we do our part to prevent that? So all of these corporations have been giving very generously to support the work.
And it's really wonderful of them to do that, given that from a lot of the issues, especially in the US, people want hardcore numbers. They're like, I don't want you to tell me this is what the issue is and we're working. They want hardcore numbers. So it's really a testament to you and what you've done, that they believe in your mission without having these, this is the issue in percentages, right? So it's amazing that you have so much corporate support and foundation support. But one of the big ones that you all have that I know you're very excited about is the Sandals Foundation. I've worked with them before. My son and son were with them. They're an amazing organization. So you all just had a launch of the Early Pages program. So tell me a little bit about that and how it went. I saw the photos and you got to go down there. I thought it was really, really nice.
So we've had a multi-stage launch with the Sandals Foundation and the Early Pages program. They have been along with us on a really interesting journey. In 2020, we began piloting a preschool program in Grenada. And the rationale behind this program is that when early childhood programs have been brought into the region, and other spaces too, but in our case, early childhood programs, they're programs that were designed in other places. Costa Rica comes to mind, Liberia comes to mind. And the reason these are places where the programs are being driven out of is the availability of funding resources, global education policy reform initiatives, where those funding resources come from. The desire is to, leverage investments in one place and share best practices. The challenge in doing so is that what works contextually in Costa Rica is not a reflection of the context of the Eastern Caribbean. And so from my perspective, there was a gap that Hands Across the Sea could naturally fill, because we had already been building on 13 years of best practices in working with schools in literacy in the region. And the region was ready for it because they just concluded the Early Learners program, which focused on K through 2 or 4. I always get jumbled, which was a big investment between not just the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, which is the regional policymaker, But US Aid, which is a tax dollar initiative out of the US, it's a diplomacy organization. So we set out to go into preschools in Grenada and begin piloting programs using particular sets of resources and developing a certain approach, guiding preschool teachers, collecting the materials, and building a framework, knowing exactly what we were doing with the goals of making literacy an explicit aspect of the preschool environment. Right? Preschool is hard enough as it is. There's no reason why literacy can't be an anchor of how to teach all the things that you need to be teaching. 2, increasing parental involvement. Parents of preschool age students are ready to learn from others how to not just support their child and bond with their child, but also how to get through being the parent of a preschool age child. And so they're willing to ask for that kind of help and support, which creates space for everybody developing new and good behaviors. 3, and this is really leaning into the beauty of the West Indies, building community engagement around the preschool program, because convening and gathering in community is one of the most beautiful strengths to find in the West Indies. And we were seeing that get lost during COVID, and it got lost everywhere, but it caused so much suffering for people. So it was, let's merge all of these things. Let's pilot this. And we invited Sandals to a celebration we did at the end of the first year of pilot, which is our version of saying, let's have like a science fair, but for literacy, and put this front and center.
Okay.
And Sandals helped to finance that party. And the media was there. I mean, it was something special. The kids are performing. There's all these things. So Sandals supported that. And I spoke with them about a year and a half later and said, we're just about done with our 2-year pilot in Grenada. We soft piloted in Nevis. I need to make a manual and collect all these materials. And I laid out what that looks like and what it was going to do. And it was a really big undertaking, and they fully funded that. So that was step 1.
Wow.
So I had the opportunity to go and present that manual to 12 national ministries in Barbados this October at the 8th annual Early Childhood Leaders Conference, which is a UNICEF conference with the OECS. Trinidad was present as well. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
And so we did that launch, and I was able to give an orientation to all 12 ministries on this open access resource. If we're in your country and you want to work with us on this, let's start the conversation. If we're not, this is yours. And when you read this manual, it feels Caribbean, and it even addresses, in the concept of English language learning, what is it like to approach a child through a dual language acquisition and, dialect shifting approach.
Yes.
Then we did a formal launch in Grenada, because that was our mother country for the program. And we had 29 schools who joined the program show up, and they showed out, and the kids performed, and we have multiple ministry reps and Sandals there. So Sandals now fully funded this year's program in its entirety in the launch in Grenada.
Wow.
And it's a real game changer, because so 500 manuals have been printed to be able to scale throughout the region, and manuals are expensive to design, to print, right?
Yes.
And then they're also supporting now the schools, and those are resource sets. There's boxes of books and materials. There's training. There's a lot that goes into this. Now we can show the world, Sandals' reputation is very clear. They don't invest, they're smart business people. You don't invest in philanthropy unless it's going to actually do something. And this level of investment really puts us in a position to turn to more U.S. organizations. The Beverly Foundation is our leading U.S. organization with the Sandals Corporation, and it's the foundation, to say, join us, because we're doing something really important. And you have to be some kind of person to not believe in why it's important for preschoolers to be reading and have access to books. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Right. Right.
But before this program, many of the children were never touching a book until they were getting to kindergarten. And we
Oh my
see
goodness.
transformation. We have people banging on the door saying, when us, when us. And for us, it's all we need is a meeting with the early childhood director and the funding. And so we're already talking about what countries are we going in next year, because we're ready.
That is fantastic. So, okay, so you've got a lot happening. You're making an amazing impact. Now it's the end of the year. In the US, this is when everyone is choosing where to put their money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they're going to give. We just had Giving Tuesday, and throughout the end of the year, that is the starting point through the 30th, 31st, with people they open their hearts and they open their wallets. Mm-hmm. So tell me what it is about Hands Across the Sea that makes you open your wallet and makes your, feedback you've gotten from your donors, from individual donors, from program managers. Tell me what kind of feedback you've gotten to say why they give, why you give, and why you love the organization so much.
Can you imagine that it only takes $38 to provide a program and resources for a child for an entire year that could change their life? And so when we get feedback from the kids, there are some children who have never left the island where they live. There are some children whose families have not had the resources to leave in 1-2 generations, and yet they're imagining becoming a pilot. They're imagining snow in Canada. They're imagining things that they didn't have language or ability to even conceive and connect before, because they found it in a book. And so many of us have, I think, stepped away from the magic of the book. The children who we're working with are examining and experiencing the magic of the book. And it starts with the littlest ones, but even up to the high schoolers. Kwame Alexander's, crossover series. We had a high school student do a research paper, and she shared that through reading that book, she was able to find peace in realizing that not all families are this, not all families are that, and struggles that she was having in challenges that she faced in her daily life and in her home, she was able to find solace and comfort. And so from academic success to imagination, I don't want to be in a world where children aren't developing imagination. That does not look like a great future to me. To even that, I think last year was the highest suicide rate for teenagers on record.
Great.
And we're putting books into children's hands that are allowing them to build a world and find peace and space and understanding. So we watch that happening all the time. And when people have doubt, it comes back to, it only takes this little to do this much. We see in the field, we hear stories from some of the children who go through our programs. One boy shared with us that his brother had been killed in gang violence, and he found peace in the library, and he became a student librarian. And then he was able to get other boys he went to school with, get involved in the school library. And that not only did it help to give him a space to be able to process and work through these feelings he was having, but it gave him opportunities to develop in ways that he didn't know he had the chance to build confidence and skills. We're talking about every part of the children's world are being touched. And when you're putting thousands of books, we've put almost 600,000 books. When you're putting that many books, every child's going to be able to find something, at least something. And they're new books because there's no reason in the world why children should be receiving anything other than the same new book that your kid and my kid has.
I love that. And it's not just, books that the people don't want in their house anymore. The pages are gone. They're out of date. I think that it makes you feel, I mean, even as an adult now, when I get a new book, there's something about being the first person or, you know, to turn that page, right? There's something that you feel like I get to be the first person to go into this world, knowing thousands of people have this book, but you know, it's something about having the new book in your hands. And it's a feeling of kind of worthiness and confidence that is important. It's important. You know, of course, it's nothing wrong with getting a book secondhand or third hand, but just that feeling of you are so important that I want you to have a nice new book in your hands. I love that. Love that. I'm going to let you get back to your family. We have interrupted your routine for the evening. And you know, I could talk about literacy forever. You know, I love books, especially I love books and I love the Caribbean, and you're putting the two together for me. I have an off-topic question. So you've been working with the region, working hard. What are some of your favorite places to visit that are not for work? You know, so when you just get to get away a little bit, which place do you like to go?
Well, then I can't name any countries I work in because I won't. So I won't name any countries I work in because I have to be that mom who loves all six. My husband and I recently took a trip to Antigua, and that was such a treasure. So if I'm thinking about the region and a place, I don't work in Barbados, but I'm counting the minutes until I can get back to Barbados. I love the warmth and the humor of, you know, everyone in Barbados. And I just can't, I'm telling my family, you know, we're 2024, you know, is the year of Barbados for us.
Oh, I love that.
As far as where I work, every country.
all of them. So if you had to pick a dish that you like, before we started this, we started talking about what we did not eat, but we're going to keep this positive. So what do you love? Pick maybe one or two dishes. It could be a drink that you really, really love from the region.
Sorrel juice.
Just made that.
Sorrel. Do you make it with or without nutmeg?
I don't use nutmeg, but I do use clove, and I do use ginger. Ginger is controversial, but I use it.
Yours sounds like it's right up my alley.
Right. I made it for, usually it's like Christmas or whatever, but I did it for Thanksgiving here in the US. Like my kids, any holiday, actually any time is sorrel time. So yes, we are in agreement on that one.
I am allergic to gluten, and so I just like cry as I stare at roti.
That has to be painful.
So since I can't eat gluten, I'd say chicken wings.
Okay. So is it more of a stewed chicken, or is it more of a curry, or do you like jerky, like spicy type stuff?
Sure. I have a reputation. in the island as being the pepper lady.
Oh, okay.
We pulled over on the side of the road and like bought through the car. But that actually brings me to what my absolute greatest. So I have two treasures that I can't leave a work trip without. And it's way too many bottles of pepper sauce. By the way, you know, shout out to Baron. You know, it's like hardcore. But
now every country has its own.
And I have about 5 bottles of different ones. And I know exactly whose I'm going for where. And I know some of the ones that I have fallen in love with, you can't find unless you know everybody in the neighborhood. And so we have almost a half of a shelf in our pantry filled with pepper sauces. The other is cocoa tea.
My kids fell in love with cocoa tea. They went to Trinidad some years ago, and they would get up in the morning and their great aunt would make cocoa tea for them, and she would grate it and do the whole thing. And of course, I don't do that. Ours is powdered from, but they fell in love with that. So yeah, I get it. I get it. Perfect. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. And again, I encourage everyone to visit the website, handsacrossthesea.org. I'll put everything in the description and some programs that you all might want to check out that might, speak to what you are interested in and what you care about. And absolutely follow them on social media so you can see the growth like I have. And do not forget to sign up for their newsletter. I get the newsletter. Make sure you get the newsletter so you can, see what's going on and give. We just finished Giving Tuesday. Some of you may have your employer might do a match. Check into that. That way your impact can be doubled, sometimes tripled, depends on what kind of structure they have. You would be surprised what kind of programs your employer has to help you be a more giving and philanthropic person. Thank you so much. I had an excellent time talking as usual. We have to do this again. Just make sure I'll check the newsletter and you make sure to let me know when something great is going on. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.